Uncle Ron and stuff. Today's episode is about converting a Linux computer to Windows. I inherited two of them that were running Linux and not as a virtual machine on a Windows machine, but totally installed on the hardware, including formatting the hard drives with whatever Linux uses. I don't know what that is. But anyway, it is not an easy process. So if you're going to run Linux, I think there's some way to run it as a secondary operating system under Windows. I don't know exactly. I've never done it, and I think there is some way to do a dual boot. You can boot either into Windows or Linux, and that's just the way I suggest you do it, as opposed to a pure Linux installation. Because if you do that, it's going to make it really hard for anybody else ever to convert that system back to a Windows system. Now, in one case, uh, it was a laptop, and it did have the ability to boot from a USB drive. But when I tried to do that and use a new install, an ISO of Windows, uh, it, it could not recognize the format of the hard drive. It was basically called foreign, so I couldn't go any farther. I couldn't do anything with the hard drive, even though I could boot from a USB uh, boot startup or whatever you want to call it to get Windows 11 on the machine. It wouldn't work that way. The other situation, I had a desktop. It was also Linux, but it didn't even have a USB option for booting. I know that makes it really old. I don't know why that. It's like an i7. It's got 4 or 8 virtual. I don't know, a lot of processors and a lot of memory. And that's why I was interested in converting it from Linux over to Windows. Now I've taken in a lot of used computers over the years and beefed them up, added memory or increased the hard drive or done something to them, and got the current version of Windows on them one way or the other, and then given them away to people who don't have one or kids that need one. And when I got these in, that was my intent. And because I knew I could not give away Linux machines. I did poke around Linux. It looks fine. It looks like a good, healthy, robust operating system. I'm not slamming Linux, but unfortunately, 90% of the world, or whatever the number is, runs Windows. So I felt like I had to get that on there. Okay. So, and I talked about this in an earlier video. I didn't know how to start it because the hard drives were formatted Linux. Now I did with the desktop. Unfortunately, didn't have a USB boot option. If it had that, I could have taken this what was basically the C drive out of it, hooked it up to another computer, and wiped it and formatted it for Windows. Put it back in, and maybe I think my USB option of booting or getting Windows as a fresh install on that hard drive would have worked, but I didn't have the USB option available to me. So I thought about it. I was like, well, what could have hurt? So instead of putting a empty hard drive back in that desktop, I cloned a Windows install on another computer. The brand was HP, but I thought maybe it would let me do something. At least it had some sort of Windows format, NTFS, yeah, NTFS format on the hard drives. So it let me at least try to load something on those hard drives. But lo and behold, when I installed it into the old Linux machine hardware, even though it was completely different hardware, different manufacturer, different Ethernet drivers, different audio drivers, different USB drivers, all that. Windows did come up, and yeah, it was tangled up for a while. It restarted a few times, but it did find some of the right drivers for the current. It was actually a Dell Linux machine, and it came up enough so I could work out the knots and fill in the holes and run system file check and actually do a image restore, which was new to me, where the original Windows had been created off of a system image and ISO, and it has it stored on a hard drive someplace, and you could do image cleanup or whatever. And between the two, with an image cleanup and system file check, I was able to get the Windows 11 installed on the Dell used to be Linux computer. It's not perfect. I have some tangles yet to sort out, but so far I keep getting them tangled out and the system's running fine. I won't go any farther than this. If you have a Linux machine, try to install Linux as a secondary, what do you call it, a dual boot in a dual boot fashion. So if you ever decide to give up the Linux, you got a fallback position. Now, I inherited these two, both were in good condition, and I didn't really understand why he was giving me these, other than he said, I want you to, if you can fix them up and get them out to see people that don't have them, great, okay? And if you can't, no big deal. Anyway, when I was looking around Linux on the desktop, excuse me, I did find evidence where he had tried to do some sort of Windows install on it at one time. He tried something, but obviously it did not work. And I think he gave up on it and decided, the best thing to do is give it away and maybe somebody will know how to fix it. So I have the desktop running. The laptop is a different story. Again, I couldn't use the USB to boot from because it wouldn't recognize the Linux formatted hard drive that was in there, the C drive. So I did a similar thing on that. I took it apart and formatted, did a disk copy of the same old HP computer, and I can get that back in there. My problem runs in this situation is that this is the very first laptop that I ever worked on where the hard drive was not available from the bottom. You can't just open up a panel and swap the hard drive out. Yes, the memory is down there, but not the hard drive. So you have to take the whole top off, the keyboard and that whole upper, the pointing pad, that all has to come off, and then you can easily get to the hard drive. So I have gotten it in there, but there's about 4 short little ribbon cables that have to be connected between the keyboard and the pointing mouse, the top, the keyboard and the plastic top and everything. There's like 4 ribbon cables that have to be connected to basically what is the motherboard setting in the bottom of the laptop. Never seen a laptop like this before, and I hope I don't see one again. That's really. So I haven't tried to reconnect those cables. I don't know if it'll work or not. It's a real stretch. It was a bear to take apart. This is a case where from 99% of the people, that whole laptop would have been trash, unless you want to run Linux. And then it'd be okay. It was running Linux okay as far as I can tell. It needed some sort of Linux update, but I wasn't going to do that. Okay, this is all about Linux. And if you don't need to put it over to Windows ever and ever, don't worry about it. You can do whatever you want with your Linux machine. But if, as a fallback position, make it dual boot. If you can make a Linux and Windows dual boot, that would save somebody in the future from a big mass handle. Having those hard drives formatted in Linux takes care of all of it, makes a big mess out of everything. That's enough for today. This was about the horrors of getting Linux off and getting Windows on. Now, I bet you somebody knows how to do this without the hassle. Probably will, and you'll see it and go, no, you could have done this and it would have been fine. I didn't know that. I'm still learning. Today is the 17th of October, 2025. That's it for today.